Remember, this is a mistake whereby we give you live coverage of events as they happen from different parts of the world and, of course, different parts of this country. And, of course, as I told you, the big news of the day, we're keeping an eye on the National Treasury where the economic survey for the year 2020 is expected to be released any time from now. And, of course, once that process kicks off, we shall be taking you there so that we can listen in and get to understand what is the status of the Kenyan economy. Forget about what you have heard from politicians and so many people. But the beauty about the economic survey is that it gives you real data. And you know what? Figures do not lie. That's what we say in business. But before we get there, time now to focus on our conversation this morning. You see what? I mean, since 2020, when COVID-19 struck the world, there has been tremendous disruptions in all spheres of human life, from human resource to the way we interact, to the way we eat. It has been a total disruption. But one thing is for sure, the nature of work as we used to know it is now completely different and different forever. People are working from home, people are working remotely, and that is likely to be the new normal, as we say. And so this morning we want to upgrade our conversation and see how exactly has this catastrophe in the name of COVID-19 changed human resource management. Helping us to put this into the right perspective is the Executive Director at the Institute of Human Resource Management, that is Quresha Abdullahi. She's on the set this morning. Thank you very much, Quresha, for joining us here. You see, most of the policies and regulations that currently govern the human resource, not only here in Kenya, but around the world, they were drafted before COVID-19 happened. Then in July, in March last year, COVID happened, and it changed the management of human resource as we previously knew it. Has this, of course, impacted the way you as an institute, number one, train your people, and number two, the way you regulate the industry?
Thank you so much. As you've rightly put, we've been talking about the future of work. Then COVID happened, and we found ourselves right in the middle of the future. So we're talking about the future is now. Mm-hmm. COVID happened in November 2019, arrived in Kenya March 2020. And one thing that we've realized is that HR practitioners were considered to be the business partners. We found ourselves to be part of the business. Everyone wanted to pick the mind of the HR professionals, what's next? And the first thing that came to mind was work from home for everyone. Are we ready? What are the policies in place? And depending on the industry you work with, because we were looking at 3 institutions coming together: workplace, school, and family. How that is managed all depended on how quick you are in terms of your creativity and innovation. Mm-hmm. And it gave birth to different positions within the human resource industry. We started talking about AI, how to ensure that machine and human integration is no longer a competition between the two. We looked at data analytics. We even looked at formulation of policies. At the Institute, even how we train changed, because there was this perspective that for you to do any trainings, it has to be in person. Mm-hmm. But we had to quickly change into online trainings. And the same thing for the workplace. We've seen so much being transacted online, whether the different platforms, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, and all depended on, are we ready in our houses? Because remember even the internet uptake, because we had to, if you did not have space in your house to convert it into an office, we had to now see how quickly can we do that. And even for some people, the environment they work in may not have been conducive. And then something else comes to play, the mental health of the employee. Because with little help, how we interact because everyone now was at home. You have little support, especially for the young mothers, and you have to play 3 roles: to be a mother, to be an employee, and to watch assignments, especially for those who are doing homeschooling. So different roles came quickly, and that's when I mentioned about innovation and how quickly can you be creative, and work had to continue. If I talk about recruitment, some companies continued recruiting, but the question was, how do you start onboarding? Because before onboarding happens in an office setup, you're taken round, but now you're working from home and you need to be brought up to speed.
And not just from home. I mean, you can even work from, anywhere, city center, Nairobi National Park. I mean,
the term we're using right now, it's not even work from home, it's work from anywhere.
Yeah, it's work from anywhere.
And the beauty of all this, and I say every disaster comes with its own disadvantages, that it has made all of us equal. Because we've seen people who are disadvantaged before in terms of coming for interviews. Far from Marsabit to Turkana, doing interviews online and getting the positions and still continuing to work. So it's created some level of equality to some level and allowed people to work from different levels.
And I like the fact that, I mean, the whole conversation was about, training people for the future. And you've rightly put it. I mean, now we are living in that future. So what has changed in terms of regulations?
So in terms of regulations, I will look at this from 2 angles. Because, when you're changing a legal framework, especially at country level, then it takes a lot of process. And that's why we have different leaderships. And also in terms of internal policies, what was required and what was done by most companies, which was impressive, is quickly update their internal policies. Because remember, your internal policies are as solid as the legal framework, provided you can defend it within the situation you found yourself. Like work from home, before we had commuter allowance, now we have to talk about internet accessibility allowance. How are you going to convert that, and how are you going to convince me that you're no longer giving me that commuter allowance, but you're going to ensure that there is an office set up at my home? So that now has to be anchored in your policy, because remember, as I mentioned, changing policies and laws within the country takes a lot of process. So the quickest way and the quickest win was updating the internal policies. We had strategic plans, which we're looking at, some of them 5 years. Now for the last 18 months, you had to quickly readjust. And now HR was at the center of it. On seeing now, this is what we've planned, it may not be possible. In terms of even training, some companies have even gone steps ahead and doing virtual reality in terms of onboarding. That through virtual reality, it's no longer even online and sitting and talking. It's about virtual reality. Creativity is on another level that we've not seen. Another major role that came up was HR analytics. The HR professional, we knew that data analytics are for the IT, but now we are right middle in it. We have to see how people are performing, work from home, define what needs to be done wherever you are, and how can we work within a team, even though we spread across. So we have to think about, can we create even the social hour to come together online and discuss issues, and allow everyone to work at their own pace, provided you meet your targets and report to it. And then we have to start using the central boxes, like we have different, like Google Documents box, whichever you are conversant with, to ensure that people spread across can still work on the same project, because they can access, and thankfully internet has made it that possible, even for our training.
What are your thoughts there? Because I'll be coming back, and I really want us to discuss the issues around, how companies have been empowered, to empower their employees, to work remotely, as we are saying these days. But listen here, I mean, the conversation that we are having here, touches on every aspect of human beings, and we are talking about human resource management. And you know what? Each company, or every company that you see, is as good as its human resource capacity. Because every business, every company must be centered around its people in order for it to deliver. But the question is this: how have you been impacted by COVID-19, especially working from home as an employee. You found yourself in the middle of this COVID storm, and now you're being forced to work from home because of social distancing issues. Well, it comes with different challenges, right? You know, in terms of, stable internet, balancing between family, cooking and all this and working from home. How has this impacted you? At O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle, at KBC Channel 1. Quresha, you have a Twitter handle, right?
Yes, it's Quresha Abdullahi.
Quresha Abdullahi. Share with us your thoughts, because it's going to embolden and enrich our conversations this morning, because we are with the experts. Quresha Abdullahi is the Executive Director at Institute of Human Resource Management. Look, companies, they have various terminologies, to deal with human resource, especially when it comes to management. You talk about right sizing, downsizing, outsizing, and all these. We saw a situation whereby companies went into right-sizing and downsizing mode. People were laid off, and there was serious reorganizations. But we didn't hear, and a lot of people say that the Institute was very quiet when the rights of workers, was somehow conflicted during the COVID-19 crisis. Have you, of course, it was also a surprise to you because you did not expect this. This was completely unprecedented. How have you managed to recover, to wake up and say, hey, look here, something was amiss here, but now we need to fix things?
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, the Institute was the first to advise the industry. And the first place that everyone stopped at was at the Institute in terms of how do we handle these issues.
That was later on. COVID struck in March.
Yes.
You issued your statement sometimes in August?
On the same, in July.
In July? In July. That was about 4 months later.
4 months later. But we've done a lot behind the scenes during that time. So what happens, unfortunately, different industries are impacted differently. The major hit were tourism, the transport industry. Those are the major ones which were hit. And now when you have to look at the ways and balance, because you have a business to continue and you have a workforce that you need to keep on paying. You have to balance the two and see what's the way forward for me. So should I close business, or do I start talking about the downsizing and the right sizing, including freeze in salaries, stoppage in salaries for some, or even some of them cut in salaries. I saw yesterday in KQ, they still insist on having the salary cut in place because they don't feel they've recovered.
And it's not just KQ, yeah, even in very many media houses, many companies, definitely. And
that is a trend, and I'm glad there will be a report which will be out today. It's the unfortunate bit of such pandemics come up with. But this has challenged us to prepare ourselves and look into the future and take some sabbatical leaves and see what could happen, what's next, and how do we move forward. There are some companies we interacted with, companies like Isuzu, where everyone else was talking about the cut in salaries and all that. They came into the innovations and creativity and they have not only maintain their staff, but they managed to give a salary increase because they came right into the industry. They started doing different things differently. So it's all about the leadership and all about what you're providing in the industry. Like for the tourism sector, it's difficult because we rely on international tourists, and that is something that we need to improve at country level. Can we start promoting local tourism, even though that there was a caveat in terms of travels and all that? Because remember, we have to contain this disease, and if we all work together, we will soon come out of this. And the good news is that if you look around, jobs are still being advertised. As of today, I could see more than 10,000 jobs afloat. It's all about how you package yourself and place yourself for those jobs. Yeah.
Look, you're talking about, the economic survey report, which is expected to shed light on the status of the Kenyan job industry, and it's apparent that millions of jobs were lost in the year 2020, 2021, and so how then do you deal with these massive human resource that was previously working, and now they're finding themselves out of workplace?
So it comes down to what we call reskilling and upskilling, because you know, when you're struck by such an incident, you don't just sit back and say, I've lost my job and I'll sit back. You have to get creative around it as an individual. And you will see within the market, as we talk about people losing their jobs, the people who have been headhunted as we speak. So it's all about your brand, whether it's online or even at personal level. How do you brand yourself? And where do you see an opportunity? And those are the skills we're looking for, people who can actually see problems, come up with the solutions, and willing to take the risks for it. And with the right, I think, with the right information, with the right mindset, I strongly believe that yes, there were some jobs affected, close to 14%. That is massive in the different industries, especially those impacted mostly were the youth. But how quickly can we get creativity around it? A major business industry that popped up was the social media. Like, people needed different people to manage their businesses on the social media. So how do you place yourself in terms of the IT skills? Can you go back and upskill or even reskill? So it's an unfortunate incident, but I am sure Kenyans are very creative. And as we talk about some losing their jobs, millionaires were born out of this situation because they saw an opportunity and took advantage.
This is what we say. Yeah. This is the reason why we say that in every dark cloud, there is a silver lining. Sure. You see, even in your industry, when you're seated here, I mean, it has also been impacted because of, you know, big data and, of course, data analytics, as well as artificial intelligence, whereby now you don't have to have physical number of employees, you know, managing employees' files. This can be done remotely, and it can be done by machines. And this is putting into question the future and the role of future human resource managers, future human resource employees. How are you, as an institute, I mean, retooling your workforce, retooling your profession, you know, and prepare it for the upcoming disruption?
Thank you. I mentioned earlier, yes, we're talking about human-machine integration, and some of the quick trainings and courses we're launching at the institute is master classes on emotional intelligence, AI robotics, HR analytics, because we need to prepare the workforce. Remember, these machines have to be managed by humans. There is a science bit of it and the art bit of it. And the art bit of it needs to be handled by humans. And we can coexist. We need the machines. They fast track the services. And that's why I'm saying in any situation, we need to embrace ourselves for change. But what I can assure you is that as we lose, I think around June, we estimate about 96 million jobs will become redundant come 2025.
96 million jobs.
But we'll still
that is worldwide.
Yeah. But we have equivalent to it coming up. We just talked about the AI, creativity, social influencers, because you've seen people handling different tasks. So the underlying issue and the bottom line I want to mention is that, yes, AI robotics is here with us, but humans are the key drivers on that. Because remember, we can even make a decision not to form them, but we need them because we need an economy to run, we need to upscale, and for us it's just to keep up with the skills and continue upskilling as these things evolve around us.
You're talking about 100 million jobs, you know, becoming redundant in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now. And a lot of these jobs that will become redundant are jobs that would not require human intervention, you know, at a greater level. But when you look at the workforce that is likely to be rendered redundant, this is a workforce that is not prepared or is not well capacitated in terms of current working styles. So what is the role of human resource in ensuring that these people are well guided and they are well capacitated to face tomorrow's work demand?
Currently, we're saying the human resource practitioners are the kings in the boardrooms. And the reason why we're saying that is that we're the ones looking at these trends, and we are the ones advising the board and even the hiring managers and supervisors on what's next. And that's now where you have to do investments. Because remember, for even the business to run, you will need these people. As you declare some positions redundant, you need to move them somewhere else and keep on upskilling them through the trainings and the innovations that come up. Because we need to start thinking about the long-term impact of this. And that's why for any HR professionals out there, we are no longer about pushing papers. We have to think through, we have to be creative, we have to be innovative to support the different industries we work with. It's not about the technical team anymore. It's about the human resource and what can you do, what are the policies you can put in place, and what are the trainings you can recommend following the trends. Because you have a business to run, you have a business to recruit for, and you have to do, because it's right now it's not about the influence you have, it's about how humane can you get in all this, and how sincere can you get in all this in ensuring that you're keeping up with the trends, rather than sitting back and acting like you don't know. A lot of data is out there to help you prepare your workforce for
you have to interact with that data.
Yes.
Very good. Yes. We want now to cross over to the city of Mombasa and, of course, get to hear the people down there what they are saying in terms of how COVID has disrupted, their workplace and, of course, their jobs. And Michael Mwandiga is our coast correspondent. He's ready to talk to some of the people there. I can see there. I mean, Mombasa is looking absolutely beautiful with the sunshine out there. It's very cold here in Nairobi, but hey, we're getting used to this. So, Mwandiga, what do you want to tell us in regard to the topic that we are having this morning?
Well, good morning to you, O'Brien. You are coming to you live from Mombasa County and joining you in this great conversation of the job market and what really the employer wants. And I'm joined by youths in the streets of Mombasa who will tell me the challenges they are facing when they're looking for employment opportunities in this big or the vast job market. And welcome in, please. What is your name? And tell us the challenges the youth are facing while looking for these job opportunities, kindly. Face the camera.
Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Hinga. I'm a youth in Mombasa County. I think one of the challenges that the youth are facing, especially guys who graduate or fresh graduates from campus, is the proverbial lack of opportunity. Let me start by saying the proverbial lack of opportunity. A guy graduates, applies to multiple organizations and companies, but for some reason, one reason or the other, the guy is qualified in something, but he does not get an opportunity to either do meaningful work or get something like a meaningful internship or training program in all the companies that the guy has, all the companies that the guy has applied for meaningful employment or training. Number two, I think, is inadequacy in skill. Most of the youth you find, they leave campus. For some reason, the guy is inadequate in the skills that he gained in campus. When he finds internships, some of which are unpaid, some of which are government sponsored, the guy is like, no, I want a 6-figure salary immediately. Yet the guy does not have the adequate experience or the adequate skills that would entitle him to earn the kind of salary that he's demanding. So the skill levels is very inadequate, and yet they do not want to undertake skill-based training in organizations that offer them internships, that offer them training. Some are unpaid, some are paying stipend just to offer you the opportunity to gain skills and relevant experience. Number three, I think there's a gap in the transition from campus life, which is now probably most of it is theoretical, especially in universities and technical vocational institutions, to now professional work. I think the ministry should come up with guidelines that will help, especially the final year students, to make a smooth transition and give them a transitional process that will help them transit from the school-based training, which is impacting the skill, to now getting professional work. because you find there's a very big disconnect once they come from school and they're looking for professional employment or looking to start their professional work in future.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That's, of course, Andrew Hinga with that insight. And I'm also joined with another youth here. I will just put into perspective all these challenges they are facing. Karibu sana kaka, and tell us challenges the youth are facing. You as a youth, just give us your insight.
My name is Suleiman Khatib, and I think one of the main challenges is the redundancy in the choices youth members take during their choices of careers. Due to lack of enough career advisors, we find that many youth choose the same skills, the same career paths, and end up in the job markets that are not marketable. Yes, and another point is that many employers would seek unrealistic expectations and job experiences from these youth who freshly graduated from university. It is not fair to them and really oppresses them when they're continuing their career paths. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. And that, of course, is their insight with regard with the issue in discussion on job market. And just a few days ago, I was attending one of the mentorship programs, and some of the emerging issues which were coming up with regards to youth underemployment. There's what you call the emerging trends in social media. Of course, nowadays, many use on social media, but instead of using the social media just to build on their profile and the expertise and the professionalism, most of them we find during the job applications, some of the things which are emerging is the use maybe of the email, some of the email addresses, they have those slang words. So a very serious employer looking for for someone to employ, but this here comes a CV, but along that CV, the email address, of course, just shows that maybe that person is not that serious on that job market. So these are some of the issues, and the youth should take into account the use of social media in a very professional way, just to make sure they be very to make sure that they get opportunities in this very competitive job market. That's all we have from Mombasa County, and back to you, Brian Kimani.
Michael, thank you so very much indeed. It's always an absolute pleasure, having you from the streets of Mombasa, and of course, discussing issues around jobs and the future of jobs. And as we are talking about job this morning, allow me now to give you some very interesting statistics that were just released in October last year by the World Economic Forum. And according to the forum, about 85 million people are likely to lose their jobs in the next 5 years because of automation, robotics and artificial intelligence is likely to take over about 85 million jobs in the next 5 years. But in the same breath, about 95 million jobs are likely to be created by through robotics and artificial intelligence, and of course big data. And the question is this: what are we doing as a country to prepare our people for the next 5 years? Because look, every year the country releases about 1 million of people looking for jobs, and so you're talking about 5 million jobs in the next 5 years. So what are we doing to prepare the 5 million jobs in the coming 5 years to get into robotics, to get into artificial intelligence? That is the big question that we should be asking ourselves as a country. But you were talking about HR being the queens and kings of boardroom. So as an institute, how are you upscaling, the discussion and the training around robotics and data analytics to become more relevant in the next 5 years?
Thank you so much. So when it comes to the HR analytics, it comes from two angles. The first is, how can it help you run your business better, especially now that you're doing hybrid, some working from anywhere, others working from the office. And having said that, is that through those analytics, you make informed decisions on the trainings. And now this is where you come in. As an institute, we cannot do everything. And we need the industry, we need the academias, we need them to refresh, because we want to change this practice of, if I go to the Nairobi University, the same syllabus which was used 20 years ago is the same one that I'm going to be trained on right now. The world has moved, and we must move with it, and the professionals have a very big role to play in that. It's not just about HR. We have different professionals, and all of them have to partner into this and ensure that they're keeping up with the trends. And I'm glad we've just heard from people in Mombasa. There is a huge, huge potential which is not tapped to capacity in the coast region, and that's the blue economy. How are we preparing for the youth? Because we've had conferences around that. We brought people together, but now how we cash in on that? And that's what we need creativity around. And the message I always send is that do not sit. Jobs will not come to you. You have to create them. And the best way to create is seize the moment, come up with the ideas, and start implementing, and the rest will follow suit. That I can assure you. And if you look at anyone who has been an entrepreneur, because right now we need to change the perspective of being an employee. You need to be helping your employer, and you have to have the mindset of an entrepreneur, regardless of the industry you're working in. And that's how we move together as a country. Yeah.
You see, according to the World Economic Forum, by the year 2025, 43% of current jobs, will be shared between robots and human beings. So, as a profession, how are you well prepared, to handle this transition? And of course, how are you going to manage robots?
Yeah. So, they say change is difficult. And I have told you these robots are creations of humans because we've seen the need for it. And by managing, when you have a very good way of change management and training people, because the advantage we have over the machines and the robotics is that sometimes you have to sit back and think. That is something we are more advantageous when it comes to the machines, because the machine you just instruct and that is what it says. The famous words we used when we had computers first was garbage in, garbage out. So what you feed into those robotics is what you get out. How you do it matters, and how you handle it matters. And that's why I talked about the science of it and the art of it. And we have to balance the same. Because remember when we're talking about the resilience bit of the humans and even the employees' well-being, because you need to prepare people mentally for that. Because I don't want any sector or even any profession, especially the HR, to make the assumption that everyone is okay the way things are changing. You have to prepare people for the changes, and it starts with the duty of care. And telling them that if you're doing 100% of this, now you're going to do 50% to this level of effort, and the rest will be done by machine. And this is how we'll bring the two together. So it's no longer about the competition. It's about the ecosystem and coexisting together to deliver.
In the world today, there are almost 3.7 billion people in the labor market. And according to statistics, from the World Economic Forum, 50% of this workforce will need to be reskilled, by the year 2025 or thereabouts. And so this requires significant amount of resources. And are companies prepared, for this disruption that is coming in the next 4 or 5 years?
So that's what I would like to call positive disruption, because for you to continue growing in the industry, you must be willing to invest. That's why in every industry, you have the research and development unit. You have to keep up with the change, and you have to invest, because remember, you're not investing and making loss in it. There is always profit out of it. You've mentioned the same jobs that we will lose, more than that will come into the market. And the good thing is that it's not an individual responsibility. Different sectors are pulling resources, and the best way to do that is that they don't see themselves as competition, but come together as collaborators, one ecosystem, and start looking into the future and seeing what can we do together and what can we do separately, and even share the responsibility of this industry will focus on this industry will focus on this, And we will all prosper together, because remember, we are all interlinked in terms of, we talked about the tourism industry linked to the transport industry. So we are all dependent to each other. And when I talk about the human resource professionals, because they are the foundations of any organizations, we are the ones who are hiring. And it's no longer about just the technical skills. We're talking about even the soft skills bit of it. Because how reliable are you as an individual? Your communication skills, how are you willing to be upskilled? Because remember, I'll be willing to teach you, to train you so that you can unlearn and relearn. But if you're not putting the effort there, it becomes difficult. And that's now where we come back to now analyzing the data. Why are some people moving faster than the others? And how can we ensure that everyone is moving on the same speed, or even give more attention to the ones who are lagging behind? And at some point, organizations will have to make a decision and separate people depending on who is good at what. And you do through job evaluations and who fits where. Yeah.
You see, there is an aspect that you've brought on board here, and this is on research and development, R&D, and that is the future of organizations. I mean, any organization that is not investing, or even any country that is not investing in R&D, I mean, your future remains so shaky. But when you look at, for example, the Kenyan scenario, even our national investment in R&D is barely 3%, of our national GDP. And so a lot of companies, especially here in Kenya, we are yet to embrace the concept of R&D. So as an institute, how are you helping companies to deepen their investment and their capacity in R&D?
Since July last year, we've visited several counties, and we've had interactions with both private and public sector at county levels and some private, including learning institutions. And the message we're trying to give them as an institution is that that is the way to go. We need to reskill right now, because the beauty of this country is that, and as I say this, some people may think that it's far-fetched. If we organize ourselves, if we look into what we have, we can increase our GDP, and it comes down to what we've just talked about, research and development. We have several donors who are willing to invest in that, but what's the need for them, and how are you going to implement on what comes out of it? Because no one wants to have an elephant project somewhere that they've invested in it and it's just seated somewhere. And I am a strong believer on implementations and impacts. We could be doing the research, volumes of notebooks, but we don't see the results through implementing the same. Because if we've said this is where the future is going, we need to be emotionally intelligent. How are we doing that? Are we introducing it as a course in schools? Are the training institutions teaching? Even at our institute level, are we preparing? Even in the workplace, is the training department investing in that? Because we want people who can bring solutions to problems and are willing to take the risk for it. And that is the direction we should all be taking, rather than having 8-to-5 job and waiting for the check, because everyone's satisfaction should come from what have I contributed today differently to where I work.
There are skills that will not be needed as we head into the future. And you still have a situation whereby learning institutions are still encouraging learners, to embrace and to go into these courses, knowingly or unknowingly that some of these courses, some of these skills will not be needed in the next 5-10 years. So what is your intervention at this point?
So as professional bodies, not just IHRM, we have different ones, ISPA, KISIM and all that. And even through the Commission of University Education, we really need to intervene. And discussions should be going on right now on what are those courses. I know there are some universities who have scrapped some courses. One of the positions that comes to mind that will not be needed as we go into the future is an office manager. Because if we automate everything now, what are you managing? Because people have come up with different ways of archiving things, sharing from different locations. Self-management is something key. So those are some of the roles that we may not be needing. So are we still teaching short courses around office management? So can we quickly move that into more on the digital bit of it? Because we're talking about digitization of data and how we do that. Because remember, even data protection, as you go online, then we also need to see the security within this country. How can you prevent your systems not to be hacked? And what do we have strong policies around such issues? Because it's not about just putting things automated, but it's about ensuring the protection of the same. So quick reskilling, because, and I believe if you went to school, you should be ready to take up another skill as it comes, and you keep up with the trends. Yeah.
This is what we're calling, you know, being flexible, you know, and having a mind that is ready to learn.
Yes.
You know, there's somebody who is asking me, and you're saying you're Beatrice, at Beatrice in Corner, you're saying, you're asking me, so how do you, it is the work of human resource, you know, to ensure there is enhanced productivity, you know, at workplace, you know, by ensuring that you hire the right people and, you know, they are given the right job descriptions and so much. But how do you gauge, you know, the performance of people, the productivity of people who are working remotely?
Good. Thank you. And that's what I talked about in terms of policy formulations on how do we gauge people who are working remotely. And it comes back to the tasks. If you are assigned tasks and it has timelines, because remember you have the KPIs, and we're looking at how are we going to measure that and what is the impact expected. It becomes your responsibility now as an individual. And another skill that will be highly required is people who can self-manage, self-driven individuals, because your targets have been set 6 months, they're going to be reviewed, mid-review, and you will be gauged against that. So it comes back to documentation. Do you have clear understanding?
But Quresha, hold on to your thoughts, because you see, when you look at this country, I mean, it's proper to say that, you know, internet is now widespread. I mean, a lot of areas, you know, you can access network, you can access internet. You're talking about a coverage of almost 85%, you know, internet coverage in Kenya, but you still have the 15% where network is not very stable. But yet you're expected to work from home. So this kind, how then do you deal with these kind of employees, you know, who are in the 15% that is not well covered by internet in this country?
Thank you for saying. Actually come from the region where part of it, the internet, forget about the internet, you will not even get a mobile coverage. And
this is Garissa.
Yeah, this is where now you get realistic. And when I talk about realistic, where are our most jobs where internet is accessible? Because also, as much as we want to be devil's advocate, we have to also remember that the different regions we work with, the locations we work with, the accessibility of internet, it's there. Maybe how I will phrase that question is that, yes, you've given me targets, but have you also ensured that I have the access to the internet to ensure that I work? Definitely, the government needs to invest in those infrastructure to ensure that that inequity is not there anymore. And it's possible. We have massive resources in this country to make that possible.
Very good.
With the right mindset.
Quresha, I mean, we could go on and on and on. This is a very interesting discussion because we're talking about managing employees, managing workforce, managing productivity. But in the interest of time, we have to come to the end because right now we're going to another very important and critical meeting. Otherwise, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Welcome.